attack us on our own soil.
Sure.
Or at least from the water on our own soil. Well, some people believe that what must have happened is that when the blimp descended, it did indeed find a Japanese sub, and that the crew of the sub overpowered them and pulled them out of the... Essentially, I'm guessing this means the gondola is a couple feet off the water, right against the water, essentially, and that they overpowered them.
That seems unlikely that they would have gotten that low, though, right?
That's the hard part. And then stuffed them in the hold and took off. Now, there's some credence to this, Joe, because if you think about, well, let's say that it's just floating there and there's no crew on the top, one of them might have climbed down the ladder to check it out, got captured, and then, with a gun to his head, the Japanese said, get down here or we kill your friend.
Except for that, wouldn't they want that classified information that was on the blimp?
If they went into the blimp, you would think they would look for that. Maybe they didn't go into the blimp. But the other problem with that theory is that the radio was working. Don't you think that the first thing that you would do when you found a sub floating is to call back and say, I found a sub.
Yeah.
You're not going to believe what I just found. Nothing like that.
Yeah.
So we don't...
Oil slick isn't some Navy code for Japanese sub?
Not that I have ever heard, no.
Okay.
No. So let's see. There is theory number 2. Theory number 2 says that it was a love triangle. That these men were involved in a love triangle with a woman that they were both seeing on shore. Now, here's the hard part about this, or what doesn't hold water for me on that, is that Cody was 27 and Adams was 38. So I would guess that they probably wouldn't likely be chasing the same woman. Maybe they were. It's hard to say.
It's entirely possible.
It is possible.
Were these two friends, by the way?
There's no records to say what their relationship to each other was, other than they were coworkers.
Sure.
That they served on this ship, and that's all we know that I can find. Because I did go to some Navy sites, looked up a lot of stuff, but that kind of information never seems to have been reported. None of it was recorded anyway. Here's what we have. We have a love triangle. These two men are on the L8, and a fight breaks out. They're fighting for her love. They get into a fist fight. One thing leads to another. They accidentally fall into the door of the gondola, and they both fall out to their deaths at sea.
Surely there's some safety mechanism there, though.
Well, it's funny, but the gondola, the walls of the gondola the metal is 6 millimeters thick. It's extremely thin.
Okay.
I'm guessing.
Yeah.
It had to be thin to be light.
Yeah.
Sure.
Also, when I was doing my research on this, came across reports from Navy men who had been in that or similar gondolas who had mentioned that they were extremely flimsy. So it did have a bar to lock the door, but presumably if the whole thing is made to be as light as possible, it's conceivable that somebody slamming into it could just pop the whole thing open.
That's true. Yeah, okay.
So there is some possibility.
But was maybe the bystanders who opened it up don't remember. Was the door already open when they finally got to the gondola, or was it closed?
According to Morris, who was the first one to get through to the gondola, he said the door was wide open. We don't know. Did it get popped open when it ran into the cliff?
Yeah.
Was it open ahead of time? There's not a lot to support it. Again, the details on this one are one of those weird military items where things have been held back, not necessarily reported, so it's hard to get all those details.
Sure.
You would think that they could ask some of the witnesses from the beach and et cetera.
True. But then again, as well as I do that witness statements tend to be fraught with errors and they conflict constantly. So it's hard to say. But unfortunately, this was 70 plus years ago. Not likely to find many of those folks around anymore that are going to tell you. But there is one final theory.
Okay.
And this is a theory that personally I hold. I think is probably the good one, and it's the Bermuda Triangle. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, there you go.
Not the Bermuda Triangle. No, the last one is that it may have been a complete freak accident that claimed both of their lives. When the gondola was found, like I said, the door latch was open and the door was open, which obviously is light.
Sure.
They do say there's a safety bar, but again, I have a feeling that safety bar is probably pretty minimal and flimsy, especially considering in 1942 we weren't really worried about safety as much as we are now.
Sure.
So it's not some double latch system. It's probably just a door bolt, a door handle with a bolt in it.
Well, still, these guys have been working in this thing for a long time. They probably know better than to go smashing into the door.
That's very true. But here's where what I think has probably happened starts to gain some footing. There was a microphone plugged in inside the cockpit, and that microphone it goes to a loudspeaker. That loudspeaker was dangling outside of the gondola, so it was outside. So what people are thinking might have happened is that there was something mechanically that went wrong, partway through their journey, 2 hours into the trip. And one of the men decided that he would try and go out and fix it. Ran into trouble, so so crewman number 1 is outside. Crewman number 2 is inside using the loudspeakers. Obviously, you're moving along and it's windy, it's loud, so you got to use the loudspeaker to be heard. And that what he was doing was talking to his compatriot, at which point he ran into trouble. So crewman number 1 outside slips or gets snagged or something happens, and crewman number 2 decides that the best thing to do is to go out and try and help him. At which point they both lose their grip and they both fall to the sea.
Well, but why wouldn't they have radioed back that there was a problem?
That's the hard part.
Right.
Now, have you ever known folks that were in the military?
Yes.
What is the one thing you never tell your boss in the military?
What's that?
Something went wrong. Something's broken.
That's true.
Hey, chief, this is not okay. They don't like to hear that.
True.
And the bravado says, male bravado says, I can fix this. I'll fix it now.
Sure.
Which may very well have been the wrong thing to do, and it may have been what claimed their lives. But we don't know. Nothing no bodies were ever found. If they fell to their deaths at sea, you know what it's like when ships go down. Out of however, a small fraction are ever found. Nobody knows what ever happened.
Yeah, it's funny. You would think they would have found their bodies, because if they were wearing their life belts, that would have kept their bodies afloat. They eventually would have washed up for sure.
You would think.
Yeah.
Unless the aliens got them.
Yeah, it could be.
Or the sharks.
Or the sharks.
Or the
Sharks. It
Japanese,
is off of California.
Yeah.
There are a lot of
That's a good
sharks.
point. That's a good point.
A lot of mean, big tooth fish.
Yeah.
I'm leaning towards the theory that they were actually on board when it landed, and they just crawled away into the collapsed envelope because they probably screwed up in some major way. And they knew they were going to be in big trouble when they got back, and so they decided, well, you know what? Let's just sneak off and go change our names and move to another state.
So what you think had happened is that they're both sitting there reading time, not paying attention as they're cruising back to the shore.
Let's be fair, Playboy.
Okay, it would have been Playboy. Was Playboy around at 42?
No, it was not around yet, I don't think.
It would have been some skin mag.
Yeah.
Some skin mag, and they're not paying attention, and they run into the cliff. At which point, go, we're gonna get out of here, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. Let's run away to Mexico.
Maybe they bailed on the cliff. They released the depth charge, and while that was a distraction, they bailed out on the cliff.
That's
it would actually
a plausible scenario,
and that's why it got its lift.
If they didn't bail on the cliff, because the depth charge, I would think, wouldn't just pop out easily. But they're saying hey, we're snagged on this. We got to get some lift. Drop a depth charge. Drop a depth charge.
That's a good point.
And that'll get us unsnagged from this thing.
Yeah.
But
I hadn't thought about it. The way everything. I'm glad you bring that up, because I was reading it and thinking that what it meant was the force of the impact broke it loose. But
it's possible.
But your theory is just as plausible.
It's entirely.
We need some lift. Let's get rid of some weight. Throw everything overboard.
Yeah.
It's like that. What is it? The old hot air balloon cartoon in cartoons. Throw everything overboard as fast as you can.
Yep.
Including the guy you don't like.
Yeah.
Very well could have happened.
Yeah. Or it could be. It could be this too. Maybe, perhaps one of them murdered the other one out at sea, pushed his body out. Mm-hmm. And after weighting it down a little bit or something like that, and then he's plotted this out. He's going to come back. He's going to bring it in really low, right over the beach, so there'll be lots of witnesses that this thing is just adrift and everything. But he screws up, hooks on the clip, has to drop a depth charge to get lift, and then continues on to his landing. And then when the whole thing collapses, he crawls away underneath the collapsed envelope.
Huh.
Yeah.
Again?
Although, ostensibly, he would have been in a uniform.
Oh, yeah.
It's the only drawback.
Well,
and then they would have been like weird.
He could have taken his shirt off, so everybody wears, when you wear a dress shirt, there's some kind of shirt. You've always got a T-shirt of some kind on underneath.
Yeah, and
he
also
could have slipped away.
And also, if he planned it out in advance, which he may have done, he could have brought along some extra clothes.
Yeah.
There is that.
I think we've solved it.
Yeah,
We've solved it.
I think so. Yeah.
You want another weird, other twisted bit of history up with this story?
And what's that?
So the L8 was purchased, as I said in the beginning, from the Goodyear Corporation.
Yeah.
When the Navy stopped using blimps, they sold it back to Goodyear.
With a lot of patches on it, I assume.
Yeah, with a bunch of patches on it.
Right.
And this particular blimp was the Goodyear blimp that was used at football games from 1968 to 1982.
Wow.
It was the same gondola.
Same gondola,
So the same
different envelope.
gondola that was recording all those football games that we always saw in the commercials, if you're old enough to remember watching those commercials, that was the gondola that was involved in this crash.
Wow.
Wow, that's cool.
Today, that gondola, obviously, it stopped being used in 82. It's now in, I believe it's a Goodyear museum. They still keep it, and they still have it. So it is still around. Obviously, probably repaired and repainted several times.
Sure.
What happened in 42.
Probably,
But ladies and gentlemen, don't go breaking in and trying to hop onto it and go looking for clues, because they're long gone.
yeah, they're
Long
going to
gone.
paint it over.
Okay.
Anyway, we solved the mystery anyway.
We
so
solved
what
the
point would
mystery.
that be?
And that's it. We've got it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you want to go ahead and read up on this story and take a look at what we use for the research on this, you can always just go ahead to our website, which is thinkingsidewayspodcast.com, and you can find all research links right there. If you feel like letting us know you've got thoughts on it, you could always go ahead. If you've got another theory or you think we've missed a piece of information, go ahead and send us an email. Email is thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. And with that, we're going to take off, and we'll talk to you next week with another bit of weirdness.
So long, everybody.
Unless, we crash a blimp.
Oh, yeah. Let's not do that.
Okay.
Thinking Sideways is not brought to you by Jerk Pork Sausage. Instead, it's supported by the generous contributions of people like you, our listeners, on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Thinking Sideways to learn more.
Thinking Sideways.
I don't understand.
Does not compute.
You never know.
Insufficient data to formulate a reply.
What?
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of Thinking Sideways. As a cat runs through the room. I am Steve. As always, I am joined by
Joe?
And Devin. He was pointing at me.
Oh, was he?
Yes.
He was sort of pointing in between us, so I just
No,
assumed
he was
meant
pointing at me.
As always, we have another mystery for you. This is a listener suggestion before I get too far in, because we seem to be trying to forget mentioning that they're listener suggestions lately.
There's just too many suggestions. Sometimes you just miss that it's a suggestion.
Yeah. Well,
Sometimes
this
you
was
think you
suggested
found it.
by Joel.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Joel.
Joel suggested the topic today, which is the Glasgow effect, or you may see it referred to as the Scottish effect.
Yeah, but it's more Glasgow than anywhere else, right?
It is.
And we're 100% sure we're saying that right.
I'm pretty
Glasgow?
sure.
Glasgow?
I'm pretty
It's not
sure.
Glasgow or like
Or Glasgow, or... Do you want me to check?
Listen, do we have to go and start angry emails in the first 2 minutes, you two?
Yes.
Damn it. All right. Well, this mystery is a little bit different than normal. It's not a murder mystery.
There's a lot of death involved.
There's a lot of death. It's more of an unknown health situation, socioeconomic mystery, maybe. I don't know how to classify it.
Steve Special.
It's a Steve Special.
Actually,
There we go.
That doesn't really appear to be all that socioeconomic. I think it's got something to do with the water supply.
Spoilers!
As we'll find out. All right, well, let's start by explaining the Glasgow effect.
Yeah.
Starting somewhere in the early 2000s, a bunch of studies started cropping up that were talking about the unexplained poor health and below average life expectancy of the residents of Glasgow, Scotland. The Glasgow effect is, and I quote, a term used to describe the higher levels of mortality and poor health experienced in Scotland over and above that explained by socioeconomic circumstances. Evidence of this excess being concentrated in west central Scotland has led to discussion of the more specific Glasgow effect. Unquote.
If anybody driving home hoping for something to keep them awake, this might not be it. It's definitely more academic.
Well, but if you're living in Glasgow, this is probably going to scare the crap out of you.
Or you're already dead.
Yeah.
One of the two.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this is definitely much more of an academic mystery than our normal fare.
So it's a good one for the people who listen and run at night.
Yes.
Yeah.
That quote does it.
Before I interrupted you, sorry.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, no, is that the quote doesn't really do a good job of explaining it. So let me try and break this down in a little more of a layman's term situation. Glasgow's mortality rates are considered easily the highest in Britain. And they're among the highest in Europe, whether it's death from things like cirrhosis, drug abuse, cancer, murder, suicide. Life expectancy at birth in Glasgow is lower than average, and for men, that means that men will live to be an average of 71.6 years, whereas everywhere else in the UK, they would normally live to an average of 78.2 years.
Yeah.
So basically a 6-year difference.
Yeah, and also it's
Or
kind
7
of
almost.
It's concentrated in certain areas of Glasgow too.
Correct.
Not everywhere. There's areas of Glasgow where a white male life expectancy is 54.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and other areas where the life expectancy is actually like 83.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's all over the map. But that's the thing about statistics. You got to average the whole thing.
Yeah.
But let's get back to this. So now if we talk about women,
Yeah.
the average for women is 4 years below the national average. So in Glasgow, women are expected to average 78 years compared to in the UK the average of 82.3.
And these are, just to help frame it, these are significant, right? It's not, I mean, there's a total effect named after it, but, when you talk about the difference of 4 years life expectancy, that doesn't sound that outrageous.
Okay, well, let me try to break this down so it makes a little more sense then.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You've got a city that on its own, people, and this is, in the developed world, we've got a city where people in general aren't living as long. Now, the easy thing, and this is something that will come up in the theories, is people say, oh, well, it's the impoverished, it's the poor, they don't live a good lifestyle, they don't eat right, so no wonder they die early.
Plus, they stab each other a lot.
Well, it turns out that the upper 10% of Glasgow, the people who are in that upper 10% of the economic bracket, they also die younger than their cohorts.
That significantly as well?
Yeah, in other cities. So it's not as if it's this one demographic that's pulling all the numbers down. And that's what's got everybody kind of scratching their head is, wait a minute. So it's all across the board. It's all walks of life.
Okay.
It's not just one group.
They should do some research on this.
They have.
should try to
Joe.
find out.
I bet they have.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I read some of it, actually.
I did too.
Yeah, well, no, actually, that's a good point to bring up. There is a bunch of research on it, and one of the places that I will cite, because they put out so much great information, is the Glasgow Center for Population Health. They have study after study after study after study. If you want some good nighttime reading, I have a couple of reports that are 80 and 100 pages long.
Oh, goody.
They're riveting.
So the people that are maintaining this site, are they all still alive? I mean, I guess the site probably won't be up that much longer, right?
Yeah, no,